Hello everyone and welcome back to the Scrap Zone. I'm Julie and in today's video I'm going to share with you my tips and tricks on how to create these elegant poinsettia cards. Now let's take a peek at the Cricut Design Space file. First, I've separated them all by colors. If you're going to be making all three of them, you've got some envelopes of course. My recommendation is that you cut them one color at a time. You've got the beautiful scarlet here, and then you've got here the really pretty white ones. And if you like non-traditional colors, I've got this really pretty ballerina set right here. So let's dive in and look at some of the products I've used to create these cards. Now this wood grain paper collection I love. Every single project I've done with it so far turns out beautifully. So if you're into the wood grain papers, you are going to love this one. I've pulled out this older stamp set. I'm going to show you how to make a see-through shaker element using a flip-flap. That's right, using a flip-flap. I think you're really going to like this. In this card right here, you have this unique ornament that hangs from the center. You've got these beautiful images which are all from the Comfort and Joy Cricut collection from Close to My Heart. So the first set here I created with the darkest of the wood grain, and I brought in espresso ink and pretty much anything and everything I had gold in my scrapbooking room. I pulled out these little bottles of Stickles, so we're going to add that to the branches and the berries, which work perfectly. And then this wood grain here, I paired it up with charcoal and pretty much anything and everything I had silver in my scrapbooking room. So you're going to have to kind of go through your stash and see what you have and kind of just bring some of these elements together. So I want to show you here that I've pre-cut all of my cards by color, and it just made it a lot easier for me to have them all pre-cut and ready to go. And if you're following along, if you look in the description box below, you will see that I've time-stamped card number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just to make it a little bit easier on yourself, you can just skip to those parts in the video, but you do have to find that in the description box below. So I've gone ahead here and I did cut all of the pink ones. So let's get started with card number 1. So all of my pieces are cut, ready to go. But before I get into card number 1, let me show you something. You've got 4 poinsettia flowers, 3 that are exactly the same size and 1 that is smaller. So when you're trying to sort out your pieces, just remember that you've got 3 that are bigger, if you want, and 1 small one. So here I'm kind of pairing all of my pieces together. And I've gone ahead and I've pre-stamped in charcoal my sentiment. This is a unique piece that I created in Design Space. It's been welded and sliced. I was kind of trying to make it look like a wreath, but something a little bit more modern. So it's just a bunch of circles, but I think it looks really, really good. So the first step is you're going to add the veining in your petals, and I do that all at once. And then here I'm going to add a little bit of linen ink. Now this is a really soft ink, and the idea here is just to create a little bit of dimension against the white. So I think that looks really good. So you've got those. And then when I do white poinsettias, I like to add a little bit of green in the center, because that's how they look to me. Like if you look at a poinsettia, you'll see that there's a little bit of green in the center of them. So here I'm testing it out on the back side, and then to be honest with you, you don't have to do all 3 petals like this or shapes. You can really just get away with doing the center one. I like to apply the ink on all of them, that way I get the right amount of color and it just kind of test it out as I'm doing this assembly. I've gone ahead and I've used the New England ivy on those back pieces, just the edges is enough. And then these little berry branches, I've gone ahead and I've kind of further enhanced the color with the ink. And here you see me pulling out this liquid pearls. Now, I really like this product because it's dimensional. See here? So that's why I used it for the berries, because it actually doesn't dry flat, it keeps its shape. So the next step, as you saw, I pulled just a round handle, which is a paintbrush. I squeezed all of the little petals up, and then I used my bone folder and I pulled down on each of those petals. So here I'm kind of creating a little saucer. This is just a little area to add all of those bitty beads, and I'm just adding all of those elements together, like every single shape, and I'm offsetting all of the petals so they don't overlap on top of each other. So you'll see me kind of fussing with this last one here, just trying to make sure that it doesn't overlap. And then I just kind of hold it for a little minute, and then we're going to add a generous amount of liquid glass in the center. So these little bitty beads are from my stash. They're kind of silver in color, and I just really like the way that they matched this card set. You could use white. You could also use green, or you could use maybe a yellow little bead in the center. I did ink distress the pattern paper pieces, but I didn't ink distress the back of the card. Now that's a preference, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just going to fold my card here, and I'm going to add the pattern paper on top. This element here, you can actually glue it with just liquid glue. It pops on really easily, so I've got that. So you can see that it's got a little bit of elegance and a little bit of modern flair to it. I do like to use thin 3D foam tape because the poinsettias themselves are a little bit thick. I don't want to add too much elevation to the card, but these cards here, I'm not sure. These are probably going to have to be hand delivered to family and friends, or you're going to have to wrap them up so that they don't get all damaged during the sending them out through the mail. I'm not sure how your mail services is back home, but I know that if I mail these types of cards, I usually wrap them in a little foam thing so that they don't get damaged, and they seem to make it over really nicely. So the last bit that I'm doing here is I'm pulling some of the loose sequins, and I like the loose sequins because there's different colors in there. You'll have a bright silver. I've used the one that's a little bit more dull because it kind of reminded me of frost. So you've got a whole bunch of different colors that you can use to further embellish this card. So let's move to card number 2. In this card, I did use vellum to back those 2 candles. They kind of needed something. And I'm going to use my clear shimmer brush. Now, I don't have silver, but I thought if I used a little bit of pebble ink and I kind of mixed it all up with the clear shimmer brush, it might give it a little bit of a silver glow, which I think it did. This is optional, of course. I usually say less is more, but in this case, more is more. I added tons and tons of little splatters for this one here. So you see me here doing that same thing again. I'm trying to start with the elements that are going to need a lot of drying time. So the little berries, definitely with that dimensional liquid pearls, takes a little bit of time to dry. And then I did add some stickles to the candles, and I'm actually kind of spreading it out with a paintbrush. I found that instead of waiting hours for the stickles to dry, if you just kind of pounce it on those little shapes with a paintbrush, it dries so much faster. Because you know what, we want to create, we don't want to sit there waiting for our stickle to dry, right? So here you see me kind of pouncing it on all of those little branches. I'm going to clean off my surface. Now please use a dollar store brush. You don't want to use a good brush for this, definitely. It might get ruined. So far I've been using this one for a little bit, and it's been serving me quite well. I've gone ahead here and I've assembled together those little holly leaves. Now I don't know about you, but holly leaves have this like glossy finish to them, and I thought, okay, why not use liquid glass? But again, on my prototype, when I used liquid glass and I set it to the side, it took forever to dry. So brush it on with a little paintbrush and it dries like the drying time is almost half, if not even less. So that's a really good tip for you guys, because we're not here to watch things dry. We're here to create cards, right? So I'm going to add all of my elements, and see here, it's dry and it's got that really cool glossy finish to it. I'm going to use my paintbrush handle here, and I'm just going to shape it a tiny little bit. You'll see that those two candles sit directly into those holly branches. So you don't have to measure anything, you just literally sit them in those little nooks, and you'll see that in 1 second. If you haven't lost that little center of your flame by this point in the assembly, you're doing really, really well. You might lose this piece, so you can just cut one by hand. It's not a big deal, but it is a small piece to keep track of. So here I'm adding my vellum piece to the card, and I'm adding a little bit of liquid glue just where those candles are going to be. So then that way you don't see the glue through the vellum. We always have that issue with vellum. And here you can see that I'm adding my little candles, and they nestle right into the bottom of those hollies. So it's very, very easy to put this one together. Again, I'm using thin 3D foam tape, and I'm tacking all of those little branches here and there. I'm going to pull some of my silver thread. I'm going to loop it around my fingers, and this card is done. Isn't that cute? I really like the added bonus of the vellum on that card. So this is card number 3, and you know when you have an idea in your head and you're not sure if it's going to turn out? Well, this one turned out really, really nicely, and I don't think that it translated into the photos. So this card has an interactive element, so that little ornament, or good size ornament, sits in that hole and it hangs. So when you sit your card up, that little element kind of sways back and forth. So here I'm showing you once again that I did add the liquid glass on those little holly leaves, and I just think that it looks really, really nice. Probably doesn't translate in this video really well, but when you see them, they have that little waxy finish to them. It's just about the details sometimes, right? So these cards here, there's a lot of details in them, but they were a lot of fun to make. I really like the way they turned out, and I hope that you like them too. So here I'm putting my ornament together. So I sandwich the first two parts, which are the front. Then I cut a little piece of silver thread, and I'm just going to sandwich it in between the back and the front. I'm going to let that dry. And this is another piece that I am going to use stickles for the center, and I have to let it dry. So, you know, these are the stickles is great, but sometimes you just have to wait for things to dry, and this one here is one of them. You kind of have to set it aside and make sure you don't touch it, which I probably did. I'm going to gently here add a little bit of ink, which I probably should wait, but I'm impatient. I think we all are, right? We just want to get these cards done. So I'm trying not to mess up my stickles. I'm just going to quickly go around the edges here and add a little bit of charcoal ink. So while that dries up at the top, I'm going to start assembling this card. I did ink distress the outer edge, but not the inside of the circle. I know that you see the white, but because the card base is white, I didn't want to put too much of the ink distressing in that center. So I'm shaping my little holly leaves. I am adding a little bit of ink on the edges. The reason why I do that is that you've got two thickness of cardstock, and the white edge shows quite a bit. So I just like to ink them, and then I just move on. So I'm going to add my little twine here at the back of the holly leaves, and then I'm going to hang my little ornament. So I just kind of position it in the center of that hole if you want, and I add just a little glue dot at the top. I hide it with the holly leaf and berries, and there you have it. I still have to let that dry because it stickles, right? But it's all done, and that little element is going to swing back and forth. So here we are at card number 4. I've gone ahead and I've done my stickles and my flowers and my inking. I've assembled some of these pieces. Now let's do this really fun see-through shaker card with a flip flap. The first thing you need to do is you need to stamp your element, and it has to go on the back side of the card, and you want to make sure that you're stamping it in the right location. I'm using charcoal ink, and I'm using this stamp set. It's only one stamp set for the whole card set. And I'm going to put my frame on top, my little flower, and then I'm going to figure out where I need to stamp this Merry Christmas. I don't want the flower to hide it, so I'm going to measure this one out. So from the edge here is 1 inch, and from the top is 1.5, and it's 1.5 from the top of the word Merry. I'm going to stamp my little Merry here, and I'm going to test it on a piece of scratch paper here at the bottom. And then I quickly realized that, why isn't this stamping really good? Oh, I forgot my little sponge here. My little, it gives a little bit of give when you're stamping. So I'm making sure that everything is nice and inked up. I'm following my 2 little marks that you probably don't see in the video. And then I just let it sit there for a minute, and there you have it. It's perfect. I've got my little flower, so my word is not going to come out. I'm going to erase my 2 little marks on the base of my card, and then I'm going to start assembling this card. Now there's a few things you have to do. The first thing here is I'm adding the pattern paper to the front. I'm going to add my little frame in just a minute here. And then we're going to move on the inside of the card, and I'm going to show you how I created this shaker element using a flip flap. I'm just adding these pieces here at the front just to give them a chance to dry. So you need a 3x4 flip flap with a side opening. I'm going to add, of course, some of my loose sequins in there, and whatever you've got in your scrapbooking room. I just added a few of the cute little silver confetti, and just because I had them, so you don't need to put those in, but I thought that they were cute. And then I added just a little bit of the white bitty beads inside. You don't have to put too much in there, but of course I just thought I needed a little bit more, and there. Okay, I think I'm good with that. So we are going to seal the opening. So I'm resting my bottle tip on the edge of the flip flap, and I'm just kind of pressing that in, and I'm going to use a block. I'm just going to use a block, and I'm going to let it dry for a little bit. It does not dry clear, but it will dry shut. So that's the main thing that we want to do, right? It's dry enough for me to continue here. So I'm going to add that flip flap with the sticky part down inside of my card. Now the one thing here is that I'm kind of trying to move all of those little sequins inside to reduce the bulk, because I'm not adding anything else. I'm just putting that in. I'm following the stitch line of the flip flap here, and I'm going to run it across the top. I am using the actual sticky part of the original flip flap, and I'm just going to put that down. Now here I'm showing you that for whatever reason I was centering it on that opening, and you really need to push that up. The reason for that is that otherwise all of your sequins fall at the bottom and you don't see them. You still see them in this particular card, but if you move it up, you get to see all of them. So that's just a little tip for you. And here you've got another piece. You probably were wondering what this piece was for, and it's just to hide all of that construction. I'm going to add liquid glue. I'm going to make sure that my card folds properly, and then I'm just going to sandwich it with, like, see here, I'm kind of moving my little sequins to remove the, or to reduce on the bulk, and then I'm just going to let it sit and dry. So this is probably a good time for a break to let everything dry, and then come back after you've grabbed your coffee or your tea, and we're going to finish off this little card here. So I've added my flowers, my branches, my little berries, and a few extra sequins, and this card is done. So you can see that it's really cool to create shaker elements with flip-flaps. Here's a look at the completed set of the white poinsettia cards and the scarlet cards. Now in this part of the video, I'm going to share with you some assembly tips and tricks to make this process go a little bit faster. So step one, you're going to go ahead and you're going to stamp all of your sentiments. They've all been stamped in the same color. This one here has to go to the left side of the pennant. And this one here, I did show you in card number 4 that I've measured where the sentiment goes on the back side or on the inside of the card. So it's 1 inch from the edge and 1.5 from the top. I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to ink distress those little berry branches and I'm going to add stickles. Now for whatever reason that got clipped out of the video, but that is the next step because it takes the longest to dry. Here I've pulled all of the branches from all of the cards and I'm going ahead, I'm adding a little bit of ink and I'm adding some stickles. I'm going to add just like a bead in the center of all of the little branches here, and then I'm just going to rub it on with my paintbrush. I really do find that by doing this, the drying time is almost half, if not more. So here I'm rubbing it off on a little baby wipe and I'm going to assemble those little holly berry leaves. Now here I forgot because I was kind of marrying up things by colors, but you should take your candle pieces and your ornament pieces at this part because again we're trying to do all of the things that take a long time to dry. I'm going to ink distress all of these pieces using the New England Ivy ink. So what I do here is I like to add the same color ink. So the cardstock from Close to My Heart is double-sided. You've got a light side, you've got a dark side, and then if you add ink to it, you have an even darker side of it, right? So you've got 3 kind of choices in the same tones of colors, and I really like that. Here you see me adding the liquid glass on the holly leaves, and they really do shine and they look really pretty when you see them in person. So now that all of the stickle part is applied on all of my pieces, I'm going to bring in all of the flower parts. Now if I told you at the beginning of the video, you've got 3 that are exactly the same size and 1 that is smaller. So step 1, do all of the veining all at once. Do all of the petals, all of the back pieces, and that way you're kind of going through this assembly and you're doing things that are similar, so it goes a little bit faster. So you see all of the veining in all of the petals here, or all of the pieces. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ink distress all of the pieces again. So I'm starting here with the lightest shade because you are going to get inky. So I'm using the Ballerina ink right here, and I'm doing all of the pieces all in one pass. So you can see here that there is some merit and it does go a little bit faster. The next color here is New England Ivy, and because this one is darker and you're going to get some on your fingers definitely, I thought that it was best to do that second so that you don't mess up your pretty pink flowers. So I'm going to kind of rub some of that ink off my fingers, but you know, anytime I'm rubbing ink off my fingers, it's been a good day. So I'm going to do this little process here where I pinch each of the petals up using the handle of my paintbrush. You can use a pencil or whatever you have on hand, but I'm doing it to all of the pieces. I'm just pinching up every single one of them, and it just goes a lot faster when you're doing them all at one pass. The next step is you're going to curl down each of those little petals. So you're curling down all of the little leaves, all of the little petals from all of the flowers all at once. And again, super quick, super easy, and you get really fast because you're repeating that same step and you're getting really good at it. So I really like marrying them all up together. And sometimes you get so fast that, oh, this happens. Don't worry, we'll fix it. So I'm just going to curl it, and I'm going to add a little bit of glue, and I'm going to pop that right on top, and no one's going to know. There's so many layers to these flowers that even if you pull one off accidentally, just glue it back. Don't run back to the Cricut machine and cut another one. That's just wasting time, right? So here we're creating that little saucer, or that little hole, where we're going to add all of the little bitty beads inside. I'm going to glue them all, and I'm going to make sure that I'm offsetting the petals. I'm just trying to find which way it looks best. You will also notice here that when I do a color, the center piece is the dark shade of that cardstock, and the other ones are the light shade. So I've done all of the flowers all at once, and now I'm going to add a generous amount of liquid glass in the center of the flower, and here I'm just adding the little white beads, and they look really, really pretty. Then you can let these dry, because you do need to let them sit for a little bit because we are using liquid glass. But there you have it. Like, it really cut the time, I would say, in half. So I'm going to go and repeat some of the process for the pink ones, just in case you want to see how that came about. I did use the rose gold sequins, and I went ahead and I picked out all of the pink ones. I kind of left the brown or the bronze one to the side, and I just kind of picked and choose the one that I wanted. For this card here, I went after it was dry, and I added a little bit of that pink stickles in the center of the flame, and I thought that it just looked really, really nice. You can really see it in this picture right here. So here we are at card number 3, and I'm just going to share a little bit of, like, this one is a little bit different because it's got a different color. So I'm adding a little bit of Ballerina ink at the top, and I'm not doing it all around the card. I'm kind of going on opposite corners of the card. I just found that it looked really soft and pretty. That pink, although is not a traditional color, I just really, really liked how it turned out. So I wanted to share with you that I did do some ink distressing with a larger tool, and it turned out really, really pretty. Here I'm also showing you that that center piece is a little bit smaller, and it's by design so that it doesn't show on the other side. We're going to pop that little glitter piece in the center, and I guess you could use a full glitter piece at the back, but if you're using different colors, you have the opportunity with stickles to bring in either pink or gold or silver. I kind of wanted to use the pink, and then I just went with the glistening color, which is more monochromatic if you want. And remember I told you to let that dry? Well, I didn't. Since I messed up the ornament in the center, I decided to look at my stash, and I found these perfect pink glitter gems. Now, they're from a couple years ago, but they were just perfect for this project. So go look in your stash. I'm sure you have glitter somewhere that would match this card. See how pretty that is? I added a few silver loose sequins to kind of tie it all up, and it was all done. A lot of it is some of my old stash, and I kind of like that. So this last card here, I'm going to show you this again, only because it's really, really cool. I'm using a flip flap. It is a 4x3 flip flap with the top folding part is on the top, on the vertical side, I guess. So I've gone here and I've separated all of the sequins. I did pick out all of the pink ones, and I kind of pushed aside the ones that are more bronze color. I'm adding a little bit of silver confetti in my little flip flap right here. You don't have to add a lot, and you just add whatever you have, and they always look pretty good. So we're going to fold that up, and I did stamp on the inside of the card, and if you remember, you kind of have to measure that out just to make sure that you are actually stamping it where you're going to see it once all of the embellishments are on the front of the card. I'm showing you here one more time that yes, I did ink distress the wood grain paper, and I'm kind of going opposite side of where the flower is going to be, and I'm just kind of giving it that really nice blush look to the wood, and it looks really, really good. I know pink is not traditional, but I really like the way these turned out. They're super elegant and feminine. I'm sure you have someone that you could give this beautiful card to. So we've added the little sequins inside, and what I'm showing you here is that, again, I cut it out of the video by mistake, but you really have to put your flip flap at the top and on the side so that when you fold your card, all of the little sequins fall at the bottom of the flip flap, not at the bottom of the card, because you do want to see them, right? What's the point otherwise? So you're going to run a bead of glue all along the stitch line, and you're just going to put that in, put a block on it or put something heavy on it, let it rest, and it will glue down perfectly. Now this is the last of my set of 12. So this guide that I have completes 12 beautiful cards, and you can mix up whatever colors you want. Here's the completed Ballerina set, and I really like it, even though it's not traditional. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and give me a big thumbs up. If you want to see other cards, you might want to check out this video right here. Have yourself a wonderful day.